Vroom, vroom.
Right, this is going to be a video about a hollow front axle on a Type 35. Now, the very cheap Type 35s, in other words the 35A, which was a non-roller bearing, it looked like a Grand Prix car, and in France they called it the Tekla, and the Tekla apparently was a pearls that they used to make that weren't real. So that was like the Tekla Bugatti. Now that had a solid axle, so it was nothing like this. But the real GP car had a hollow axle, and very often people can't even understand how it was done. So I'm going to tell you now how it was done, and I've actually got a fabulous video to show you it actually being done. But talking a little bit before you see the actual manufacturing process, there's quite a lot of reasons why we had to go to a lot of trouble. So this is a finished axle. Now this is a small one because they varied. On the very early cars, that diameter there was smaller than the 51 cars, and the very late 35Bs were bigger. But obviously with the forging we had the option to make them big or small. One of the big problems with the axles is that getting that size there dead right. Now you're talking about a piece of glowing red hot piece of metal, and you'll see the man put a template there to get that measurement, and it was very, very difficult, and we even found it difficult. So obviously once I started looking at the cars, I started looking at real cars, and I noticed that that distance there and that distance there were not always symmetrical. This was a bit thinner and that was a bit fatter. But if you ever had luckily, I had a few works cars go through my hands, and they were always perfection. So it was obvious that when the mechanic built one of the works racing cars, he went down and he chose a really good axle. So if you see an original Bugatti and that's a bit narrow and that's a bit wide, it's just simply because it was virtually impossible to do. So what we did, the first batch, we had the same problem. But, you know, actually the forging was so good it wasn't that bad. But what we did in the end, we made that slightly bigger so that we could then file it up regardless and get it absolutely looking like a works car. So that's what we did. But anyway, so that's the axle, right? So this is how they did it. First of all, they forged it dead straight. So like this bit here. So that was forged straight. And then here, there was a knob like that on there. Because obviously with the hole going all the way through, this had to be squeezed back together to be able to put the kingpin in it. Like that. So then, when that was done, and that was squeezed together, they then put it in a jig and bent it like that. And you'll see it being done. The man's got a jig thing on the side of a girder in the thing. He bangs that in the forge and gets it red hot up to about there, and then he just gets hold of it and pulls it down, turns it round and does that to get that shape there, which is incredible really. I mean, when you see it, and then he tries a template on it, and then he looks at it, it goes like that. I can hardly lift this, but he gets hold of it like it don't weigh anything. And he looks at his anvil and he puts it against it and he goes donk like that and knocks it straight. I mean, you know, they were real proper forgers, and they were proper blokes in them days, you know. I mean, and you'll see it's a fierce process. Bearing in mind, I did this in the 80s because no one had ever done it before. The only people that did it was Mr. Bugatti. People messed around drilling holes up and, you know, not doing it properly. No one had done it properly. In fact, the Bugatti Owners Club were a little bit dodgy about it. They didn't want me to do it, really. And I don't know whether that was Mr. Conway or whatever, I don't know. But there were drawings available and they wouldn't let us have them. So this lump on the end of here, to squeeze that all back together, Garringtons, who did it, had to to experiment making that lump to get it dead right, to be able to forge that back solid. And also they found that if they tried to knock that back solid, you imagine there's a hole right the way through there, they were knocking it like that, and they found it had a star in the middle of there. You know, in other words, it had a fault right the way through there. So in the end, they had to make a sort of spring jig up to slowly just squeeze that lump together, and you'll see it in the thing. And they squeeze it together, and then obviously they cut this open to see that there was no fault whatsoever there. That's absolutely solid. Because you see, what you're going to do, you're going to machine that, and you're going to put a hole in there where the kingpin goes. And one of the reasons to make these axles work, very often Bugattis get a knock, so that gets bent, or the brakes jam, and it bends that. So 9 out of 10 original cars that went through my hands, you look at that, and you can see where it had been eaten up and been bent. People even cut it off, put a thing in there and welded it round, which, you know, if you've got a car that does over 100 mile an hour, I don't think you want the front axle welded up. So that was one of the reasons I set about doing this. But also, of course, the fact that we did it properly meant that if we ever decided to produce a whole Type 35, then one of the, well, not one of the bits, but all the bits would be dead right. I mean, I spent a load of time and money just making sure that everything I did was absolutely as near spot on as possible. So that is the story behind the axles, and you'll see them being forged, and over the top of it I'll speak and tell you why the bloke's trying the template on and what he's doing. But I've no doubt, even when you've seen it, you probably need to watch it twice, and even then you'll probably have a question which we'll do our best to answer. Right, Susie says we've got to be able to see an axle on a car so we know exactly what it looks like when it's on a car. I mean, I'm sure you could all imagine it, but she's probably right. So this is Tim's Type 51, and it's got one of our axles that was forged exactly as we've shown you, and there it is on a car.
Yeah.
And as you can see, the springs go through that square hole, and then you have a couple of wedges that go in there, and a wedge in the bottom. And depending on the angle on the wedge, depends on how much caster it's got. So, you know, we set them at 2 degrees usually. But anyway, so there you are. That's what the axle looks like when it's on a car. But you imagine it's got a hole all the way down there and all the way through there. And I can tell you that when you lift a solid one up and you lift one of these up, it feels like it's made of titanium. I mean, it's still heavy, but it's nowhere near as heavy as a solid one.
Okay.
But what a beautiful thing, look, you know. See, that has got all the strength that way. That's typical Bugatti. I mean, if that was round, it don't need to be round, it wants the strength like that. And it's all made in one piece with a ball and everything. We make those, we make all of that, because obviously it's always worn out. But anyway, there you are, that's what it looks like. Right, here we go. This is a video which one of the employees at the firm made for me, and about the axles being actually forged. So you're going to see real men here with big lumps of red hot metal, and I'll explain to you what is actually happening. And it's very good, I think. This is the introduction.
And how much did the whole process cost, Ivan?
Well, I went to Garrington's and they said, oh yes, well we could make the axles, but the dies would cost £12,000. So I said, oh well, we better give you a cheque for £12,000, which is exactly what we did. But nothing happened and nothing happened. But then suddenly they got on with it, and the reason they got on with it was because they have a sort of, every year they have a conference for all the people that do forging, and they've made an upright for the front suspension on a Ford, for the Ford Motor Company, and they were very proud of it, but they also thought it'd be quite good to show that not only could they do it for the latest Ford, they could make a front axle for a vintage Bugatti, which is what they did. But as it happens, I gave them the money, but one of the people that actually worked for him, who I knew quite well, he said, well, you won't believe it, he said, but we were all working on it in our spare time. He said it cost much more than that to do it, but the fact they wanted it for this exhibition, it got done. And here we go. Any minute now, you'll see the forging process, which was, you know, I tell you, I can't believe it, but when you see it, you'll agree with me. In fact, you would imagine it's being done in India, but it isn't. It was being done in the Midlands. And the only reason you would obviously think it wasn't done in India is the blokes ain't wearing flip-flops. But anyway, you'll see. I mean, there's some serious proper blokes doing this. That was the axle that they cut up to take to the exhibition to show how clever they were making this axle with a hole all the way through the middle of it. I mean, I would have liked to have got hold of that, but I don't know what happened to it. Because as far as I know, Garringtons don't actually exist anymore. But anyway, here we go. We made 20. The first lot was 20. Great big factory. I mean, you know, serious factory. I don't think it's there even. Together with, oh, this is the other people, British Midlands Stampings. Yeah, well, they were the people I think you'll see that's actually doing all the whacking and banging. And of course, just trying to think of the man who made the video. He was a good old boy, and he said to me I could make a video, and I paid it. I paid for the, you know, I just paid the expenses. He didn't make a great profit, but it was very good of him to do it. A smashing bloke. And this was the stamping company in Oldbury that did it. Now that's not there at all, because I've been there, and that's a field now, this place. It is literally a field. This is the start. Right. Now this is a great big lump of metal, which weighs an unbelievable amount. And this man who's forging this is literally making a blank. So if you watch it, you'll see it finishes up with 4 knobs. The 2 knobs where the axles go through, the springs, and the other knob is the end of the thing which gets squeezed down. So he is literally making a blank by eye. He's guessing this. He's knocking the middle down. You see what he's doing now? He's knocking the middle down to get it down to a reasonable size so that when they put it in the die, it hasn't got to push all that metal out of the way. And let's face it, he must have made at least 20 of these, because a lot of them, you know, were used to experiment on one thing and another. But I mean, look at that piece of metal, it's absolutely red hot. And if you look, you see what he's doing now is just pushing the centre down to make it a reasonable size. Now, he's knocking the bit now, so that that bit away from us is the bit that's going to be the spring box, and the other bit that's coming towards us is going to be the lump, which is squeezed together eventually to make where the kingpin goes. So obviously now look, he's turning it round and he's starting again. But you imagine, he's guessing this, he's guessing the size. Well, he ain't guessing. He's obviously a proper person who knows something, but, you know. But that is going to be the blank, which will go in the die, which was what I initially paid for. But in actual fact, one of the employees said to me it cost a lot more than what you paid. Now this is a die. Now you look at this, it's like a foot square, it's 4 foot long. You can imagine what it weighs. It weighs ridiculous. And then that press is a serious press. Now that's going to come crashing down and be the actual shape of what we're going to have initially before the hole's drilled. But what will happen is, as it squeezes it, it pushes all the spare metal out, so it'll have what they call flash on it. So you see they throw stuff on it. I think what they throw on it is sawdust, but I'm not absolutely sure. But I'm sure one of our people will know what that is. So now they're heating it up again, right? So obviously all that banging and crashing, it cooled down. So now they're heating it up. I mean, this man, that is a serious lump of metal. I mean, I know he's got it balanced on that thing, but it's still, you know, and it's absolutely sparking hot. So now that is going to go in the die, and that's going to come crashing down and make the initial shape. And the bit that it squeezes out, you'll see they take it to a clipping tool which clips off the access. But here we go. Now you imagine this. What that's having to do. That's ridiculous, isn't it? Look, and what about all the red hot metal everywhere? No one's taking any notice of it. Look, he's blowing it that way, and the bloke's at the other end. So now they're repositioning it. They've thrown, I think that is actually sawdust, but I'm not absolutely sure. Right, they're really giving it a whack now. Now you imagine we made 20 of these, at least 20. I think, actual fact, there was more than 20. Right, here we go again. Bosh. I love it. I mean, I don't think there's anybody left in the country now that can do that. You probably have to go to India. And of course they would be doing it in T-shirts and flippers.
Flip-flops.
Flip-flops, yeah. Bang. Whoa. Well, it's jumped out the die completely. Now they put it back in the die. Wallop. I mean, it's amazing that I got this job done, I tell you. It was only because, really, they wanted to show off a little bit. But it was a miracle getting it done. And we've had another load done. Timothy had another 20 done. I think we've made over 40, actually. One of the problems with this video is we don't see the axle going to Sterling gun drills and drilling the hole all the way through the middle of it, because we had to make covers to go on the end of that bit that's on the end that gets squeezed down. We turn that, we machine down the centre, and we turn that, and then there was a cover put over it, because when the drill was going through it, out of the end of the drill there's a whole load of coolant going and pushing all the swarf back, so that when the hole was drilled it was a lovely smooth hole. But unfortunately they didn't make a film of that, because that wasn't forging and that was a different thing. It was done by Sterling gun drills, and we didn't get that. But I can explain that anyway. It's only drilling a hole. Whack. I can't get over how long it's taking actually to get that final shape. Right, see that man there, I think he is the man, he's the governor, and all the people obviously working underneath him. I would say he's a team leader, that man. So now they've got this bloody great lump of metal, and it's got a load of flash on it. So now it goes into a clipping tool. Now I think this is the clipping tool, but we'll soon see. No, it's definitely not. I think this is another go. We're still forging the main blank. No, that is it. That is the main blank still being forged. Now, and you can see the flash coming out, folks. Look, if you're looking at it, you can see the flash. The bit that's obviously, extra. But you can imagine the man had to make the blank, really, because otherwise the flash would have been ridiculous. He never would have got the die to come down. I think the flash finishes up about 1/8 of an inch. It's not very thick. And then it goes in this clipping tool, which costs a load of money to make, just a clipping tool. I mean, most people want to do a cheap job. They would have said, well, leave the flash off and we'll cut it with a bandsaw or something. But, you know, you can't go to Garrington's and tell them you want a cheap job done. I had to sort of look like I was a billionaire when I went there, and whatever it cost, it didn't matter. But obviously we weren't. But I think it was the way to deal with them. I mean, when you've got a big company like that, to talk them into doing this job, you know. I mean, I don't think this company would have done this for us. I think the fact that Garrington's were behind it meant that we got the job done. Here we go. Oh no, they're putting it back in. I can't get over how long it jumps out the machine and how much work is involved. But you can see them dies. You can imagine how much they cost, because they had to put those in a milling machine that was capable of holding that blooming great lump of metal and machining the shape of the die. And the die has to be beautiful. I mean, it is shiny metal. I can't get over how much work was involved. I mean, really, I suppose we should cut this and make it shorter, but to be honest, I think, you know, it'd be wicked to do that, because it'd make it look as if it was simple, and to be honest, it wasn't simple. I mean, that press that's coming down, God knows how many tons that is. So now they're looking at it, Oh, they're going to turn it round. Well, it shows you how good the die was. Flip it into the die. Now, it's in the die, so now it's going to come down with a whack again. Wallop. And it jumps out. I mean, we made 20 of these. I can't believe how much work was involved. I mean, they weren't cheap, but it was not ridiculous. Now, you can see the flash. If you look at this sort of like a line, there is a black line, and that is the flash. Look, it's lovely and obvious now. Look, you can really... Now, this is the clipping tool. So they put it in the clipping tool, and the thing comes down and cuts the flash off. And then they turn it round. See, that's had the flash cut off, and you can see the flash at the other end, and you can see the knob on the end, which is the bit that gets close together after it's been drilled. Right, see, so now he's lining the clipping tool up. Bosh, and it cuts it off. So now that is the absolute blank. Now then that now comes to us, and we machine the ends to put a cap over, so that when the drill goes down, the fluid don't go everywhere. And here it is, so that's the knob on the end. That is the spring boxes, but they're at an angle, so when you bend it, they come up straight. And we also machine down the centre as well. So we can machine the ends to take the cap for the drilling of the holes, and then the middle bit, we can machine that at the same time. So that was the bit that we did in our lathe. There, you can see that. There, I think you can see it machined. No, tell a lie. It's at the hole drill. You can see the hole all the way down the middle. We took that Sterling gun drills and they drilled the holes. So now it's going back to the next process, which is closing the end down, which is the bit where the kingpin goes through. And obviously it's got to be closed down, so there's no sign of it even being closed down. There's absolutely nothing, to show that it's been closed down. I can't remember. This is... Yeah, so that was reforging the end, and they squeezed it together, and then they had a final die to knock it to shape to make the where the kingpin goes. Now this is bending the axle, and what the bloke does, he literally puts it in the end, gets it red hot. He's got a great big pair of gloves. He puts it in the thing, and he just literally bends it down to get the shape. And of course it stands up, the two spring boxes, but I think there's a little bit more to go. And we'll see. I don't quite know what... Oh, here we go. Now this is the thing for squeezing the end together. Now they did try squeezing it together a different method, but it didn't work. So that was when they had to have these spring bit dies. I think they call them spring. And they slowly squeezed the hole down to nothing. And when they tried to do it like that and like that, it left a star in the metal, which wasn't any good, because obviously you're going to be machining it to hold the kingpin. So as you can see now, look, they're slowly reducing that lump on the end down. And then when they get that lump down, they're slowly doing it. You see the man at the other end's turning it, and he's whacking it together. And he's turning it and turning it. And then when they've done that, obviously they needed a die to get the shape for where the kingpin goes and everything. And then that was the big die that comes down. But they're still reducing it. So in a minute we'll see. Look, you can see, look, it's going together. You can see the hole, and they're squeezing it together. And when you cut the axle up, there's no sign of that. It just looks like one solid lump of metal. But I think they have to clean out the slag that's coming in the middle there. I think they have to blow that out or something. I seem to remember. Because this is only the second time I've seen this video. Slowly going together, look. And then they take it to another die. I think they call that the closing die, that finally puts the shape in it where the kingpin's going to go through. I think this is blowing out the slag. And here we go again. Slowly reducing it down. And that was the only way to do it. They tried doing it quicker, and they weren't happy with the fact that in the end there were marks where you could see it had been pushed together. But if you look at the axle that I showed you down on the surface table, it just looks like it's a complete solid lump of metal that's never ever been anything else. I think they had to have 2 or 3 of those dies, because it started off like that, then it went like that, then it went like that. Now this is the last die, completely closing it together. But there's still excess metal, so that when they put it in the big die to get the shape of the kingpin eye, there's still metal there, obviously. And that was the bit we had to experiment with, because they wouldn't let me have the drawings at the Bugatti Trust, so we didn't know how big to make that lump. But anyway, Garrington's or whoever experimented until we found what size to make it. And as you can see, that's going completely together now. Now, as far as I'm concerned now, I think you'll find they're still doing it. But when that becomes a solid lump, I think you'll see they go over to the next die, another die we had made, that actually hits that and puts the shape for the kingpin eye to go through. But what a knockout, eh? I mean, you know, so lucky that... I think the man's name was Jim Edwards who made me the film, but we'll look his name up.
Was it Frank F?
Frank Edwards, yeah, that was Frank. He retired to Cornwall, I think. I hope he sees this, because I'd love to hear from him. There you are. Now, that's them just closed together. So that hasn't got the shape, you notice, and it's much longer. So now it's going to be heated up red hot, and then it will go into a die. Look, he's cleaning off the slack. That's good, isn't it? Look at that. And he'll go over and he'll put it in the final die that comes down and finishes it off where the kingpin goes. And then another clipping tool that we had to have made. So you can imagine all these tools. You'll see when it comes out, you'll see this slack round the edge. What a, you know, I mean, it's ever so clever, because a lot of this is being done by eye. You know, this ain't a CNC milling machine that you put it all in and stand back and it does it. These blokes are, you know, they're proper craftsmen in the old sense of the word. Right, so now he's walking over to the clipping tool. And you'll see that will come down and it's clipped it off. And there you are, there is the shape. At the end is the shape for the kingpin, and the length, of course, has got to be dead right, so that when the axle's finished and it's all bent, you can't have the axle too wide. And where the springs go through is really important, down to 1 millimetre. But this is really funny, because You know, this is where the man, look, he's got a funny old thing on the bolted to a girder, look, and he just bends it, look. And then he heats it up again. Oh, there's the template. Now, this is a template to tell him whether he's bent it too far or not enough. Look, that bit of metal's glowing red hot he's working out with there. He looks like he's dealing with a bit of wood. Oh, look, lovely anvil. It was slightly out, look, so he's just giving it a single blow. Now, look, he's got the template now. Look, he's checking it. It's so funny when he hits it just once. He never seems to hit it more than once. I think that's really good. So then the next thing is he heats it up again, and now he's going to bend it the other way. On the jig, down to the thing. I mean, you know, listen, that is a lump of metal like that. And then he looks at it on the old anvil. Oh, does it look very straight? You know, like, I'll check that. Yeah, I'll check that. Right, now, it's not perfect. I mean, I don't know whether this is... Oh, yeah, look, one whack, you watch him. That's it. I think that's brilliant. So now the next problem is putting a jig on it or a template on it to check how far apart the spring boxes are. Now, that is very important because obviously once you bend them straight and you machine them to take the springs, you can't alter the width of it. And that is where, if you look at even original axles, very often one side is a little bit different to the other. But obviously if you're going to sell them, and of course everybody who's got anything to do with a Bugatti thinks it's all perfection, which it ain't, you ain't going to be able to sell them with one thin one side and one thick the other side. But Bugatti did, because he put them on the cars. But anyway, what we did in the end, we allowed a bit more metal on there so we could get it dead right even. But we're only talking millimetres, you know. I think the next, oh, here we go, one hit, look, not quite straight. Oh, done. I think, you know, and what about that old anvil there? I wonder what happened to that. I hope it didn't get melted down. What a knockout. So I haven't seen him check the middles yet, but he will do. Oh, that does look good. Right, so now this is the one to check how far apart the spring boxes are. Because you've got to get them right, because you're going to put two holes in there, and you can't widen the chassis on a Bugatti, and you can't narrow it. That's got to be right. And I must say, they were very, very good. Very good. But we did improve it the next time by making them slightly more material, and we could file them up and get them dead on. And we had a lovely young bloke who came to work on the building when we were doing the building work. He used to use a drill, you know, for digging up the concrete and that. And when the building was finished, he wouldn't leave. Come on, Darren, you know. Tell you what, he was a bloody genius at it in the end. He used to use a big round file and he used to get it. And I said to him, how'd you get the light? He said, well, I watched the sun shining on it and I file it. He was brilliant. He filed those axles up beautifully. And there you are. There's a line of them. In actual fact, if I can find a picture, I've got a stack of them like that, all standing on one another before we finalised them. Because now, because they've got to have that square hole put in them, and they've got to have the kingpin hole put in them, and then all the bits where they match up with the bit that's machined and everything, you've got to match all that up. So that's all got to be filed. So there's another load of work, even when they're done. This bit they're showing you now was the bit that they took to the exhibition to show what they'd managed to do. And then I said to the Bugatti Owners Club, we could make a whole car. Oh no, we wouldn't like that. So they waited till they were made in Argentina. I borrowed this car to take to the factory so the blokes could see what finally it would look like. Oh look, even give the bloke's name there as a master forger. Blacksmiths, Garringtons. There's the die, look. Oh, dies and tools, it tells you who made that. Video camera. Max somebody or other, I don't know what that was about. Project coordinator. And there's the axle lying in front of her car. So there we are, folks.